Cashing in my pockets so my pennies should be. What they selling is cheap, so I'm buying that this freedom is free. I've been becoming me. See when Jesus taking the lead. With purpose I bleed and rise like going under the heat. Defeat is a never. You can't reattach with a sever. What's bringing you pleasure can tell you where you stacking your treasure. When storm is your weather, know that it gets worse for it's better.
Welcome to the Esau McCauley podcast. I'm your host, Esau McCauley. Today we have kind of two guests because you all are regular and you work here. So I don't know if it really counts as a guest. So we have Mike, our producer.
Hello, it's good to be here.
And we have a special guest this week, Emerson. I like to call her Emerson the intern, even though she's not the intern. It just flows from the mouth if you say Emerson the intern. But Emerson, what is your real job here at the Holy Post?
I am the community engagement coordinator.
And this is the reason she's here as community engagement coordinator is because today I'm going to engage the community.
Perfect.
We're going to have a periodic set of episodes that I'm at least calling Help Me Help You. I know there's a lot of people out there who need life advice. And for some reason, they've chosen to ask me. That was probably where this thing went wrong. But we asked the people to email in any questions. And I want to let you know, I am not Switzerland. I am not neutral. I got takes.
You got takes and lots of them.
So I'm going to fire off these takes. You apply these takes at your own peril. So I'm giving you the takes. It is up to you to use discernment to figure out whether or not these takes are fair, correct?
Yeah, like Esau is not perfect in his advice, and he doesn't have all the information.
Yes.
But he's going to do his best to give you some wisdom.
Some wisdom on how to live. And hopefully the people who are listening in also might get some wisdom as well, even if this isn't your question. So Emerson, kick us off with the first question. Some of them will be serious, some of them not so serious. Give us a lighthearted one to get us started.
Exactly. We'll start off light. All right. Pierre asked, are leftovers in the fridge free game?
Well, it depends on who you mean if it's free game for. So I think the adults in the house, like if you're married, if it's like you and your wife, like if it's my wife's dessert or my wife's food, do not touch that.
Yep.
And any kid cannot eat anything that like we have purchased. But if it's just like a pizza or something, then matter of fact, I get the first dibs. Basically,
the dad tax.
The dad and the mom get first dibs, and then the like minions can come in from there.
Let's play this out a little bit. So yeah, shared food.
Yes.
You ordered pizza.
Yeah.
Whoever
wakes up first.
Yes. You and your wife go on a date. You both bring home leftovers.
Yes.
Your kids can't touch them.
No, never.
Okay. What about you as a family? You all go out. Your kids have leftovers.
Oh, that's mine.
That's yours.
That's mine.
Why?
Now they have to get permission. Like, Dad, can I have my leftovers?
They have to get permission to eat their own leftovers?
If I see them and they're like, oh, thank you. You warmed up those leftovers. Like, I'll take it out.
Oh, Esau.
And here's another thing. This is also some other rules you need to get into place. It depends on the kind of leftovers.
Yeah.
So if there's a cake or a pie, basically you're allowed one reasonable slice of that dessert per day.
I agree with that.
So you can't
one slice per day.
And last slice of pie. We need to figure out who hasn't had a slice yet. So if there's one slice of pie left and one of the kids hasn't had one and you've had two, you can't be the third slice of pie person. So last slice of pie, you definitely need to sit back.
You know what's amazing in my family right now? We have 3 young boys. One's only 1, so he's not aware of pie. The other 2 will be aware of a pie or a cake that's being made and will be like, can I have a piece? And we're like, yeah, when it's ready. And then they forget about it and they never ask about it. So as long as we only break out the pie or the cake at night, we don't have to share with our kids.
You know,
I get half a pie. My wife gets half a pie.
There's someone that has stalked my family for years called the Pie Bandit. I don't know who this person is. If it's you, turn yourself in. But apparently, the kids can go to bed with a certain amount of pie.
Yeah.
And then the next morning, a significant amount of that pie is gone.
How does that happen?
And they're accusing me. It's a bandit. I mean, like, how much? I can't lock every window. Yeah, someone's stealing the pie. Okay. Emerson, what do you think? You got a take?
I kind of think it's just like if the meal was shared or if it was something that everybody was eating. then it's fair game.
I think Emerson is just too nice. I feel like she's not holding down like her spot. What else?
But if it was just like something that you specifically ordered for yourself at a restaurant or something that you made like for your lunch for the next day or something, then definitely keep that separate.
I have one of my kids likes to make their lunch and it's good.
Esau.
I'm gonna have to get that.
Esau.
Yeah.
Esau. Are you stealing your poor kids?
No. In my family, my children own nothing because
But if they went through the process of making the lunch.
for me.
Oh, Esau.
Sorry, I apologize. We need to move on before the audience turns. What's our next one?
All right. We're moving on to a career question.
Yes, career question.
Grace said, I'm an early career writer and journalist having a minor existential crisis about AI taking over my job.
Yeah.
How are you thinking about this as a writer and creative person?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, maybe I'm not paying attention, but I'm not really afraid of AI because I think that we're actually going through this interesting place as writers where I still think the quality of the writing matters. But part of what art is at this point is an exchange between the person and the audience. It's not just I just want the content. I want the content from the person. And so I think that if you're building a relationship with your audience and they're beginning to enjoy your work, they don't just want like a facsimile of it. I think they actually want the thing. So if I knew, for example, one of my favorite authors, let's say you could download all of C.S. Lewis's, which you probably can, or Tolkien or whoever else, and into an AI generator. And it says, write Lord of the Rings 4 or part 4. I wouldn't buy it.
Yeah.
Because something about me knows that it's not real. Yeah. And I feel like for good or bad, I have a relationship with an author. And so I think that going forward, there is going to be a increasing desire to have something that is real and authentic. I think this is the reason why, for example, as they're doing all of these media contracts, the thing that people are most excited about are live events. And so people are paying more to get NBA, NFL, because it's one of those few things that are genuinely communal. And so I don't think that in the future, people are always going to just say, my only desire is the content, but it's actually a relationship between the audience and the writer that I think is going to persist.
Yeah, I think that's right. I've looked into AI stuff a fair amount, and there are some who speculate it's just going to take over, that even now it's good right now and it's going to get better and better and better. And then I think there's still a chance like, oh, this is more than a gimmick, but it doesn't get to the point of complete takeover. But regardless, what AI cannot do is tell human stories. Yeah. And the compelling writing that I read, it's from the stories of everyday people describing what's going on. And so like, I agree. I bet like when it comes to copywriting and like social media captions and things like that, AI will probably do more and more. But when it comes to telling stories, I just don't believe it can replace a human.
Well, see, that's where we might disagree. I think that it might do a good job of mimicking it.
Yes.
But I think that, and part of what actually makes good writing good is this imperfections and this idiosyncrasies. And so, like I said, I think it is the relationship with the author and the audience that this won't change.
Emerson, do you have thoughts on this? I mean, you do some writing. You've thought a lot about this.
I think about this all the time. And I think just with any creative work, there's just something like fundamentally not compelling about something creative made by AI because it's like soulless and kind of, what you're saying, like even like I've questioned, would I listen to a song that was made by AI? Because AI I can imagine it could create like an amazing song. Yeah. But the fact, it could be the best song in the world. It could sound the best, but the fact that a person didn't like come up with it based on their own experiences and it didn't come from that human place makes it like completely uninteresting to me.
There have been a lot of interesting, when back during the heights of all of the like rap beats of last summer, there would be new things that were released. One of the questions was, is this real? Yeah. And there are a couple of things that you can do now where you can say, make this exact song that I have, but make so-and-so the artist. Like let Taylor Swift do Billie Jean, and then you can do it exactly, and you can hear it. So you can do those things, but I think we know that they're not real. But I'm feeling like the people need to hear me give them some relationship advice. Maybe give me a relational one. Let me help the people relationally.
Great. All right. Well, we have a friendship question.
Okay.
Lots of people need friendship advice lately. Young parent here, says William, how do you even make friends at this stage? I feel like I've been putting in a lot of effort to build friendships with few results.
Well, now, Mike, since you have young kids and you're in the middle of it, maybe you can start off that one.
Yeah, I really related to this question. I hear ya.
Tell for the audience, how old are your kids?
Yeah, so 3 kids, 6, 4, and year and a half.
Okay.
So we're in the thick of it, and it is hard to make friends right now. And because it's like the obvious advice is, well, just make friends with the parents of the kids you're hanging out with, whether that's in some mommy and me group or at church or youth soccer, whatever it might be. But even that's challenging because a lot of families are so overcommitted these days that it's like, we'll try to get together with friends and, well, they have the next activity they need to go off to. And so as my wife and I have thought a lot about this, and like, by no means are we thriving in this area, but one is we have concentrated less on having lots of friends at this stage and more on deepening the couple friendships that we do have that we feel really good about. And so that's helpful, just kind of changing expectations there. And then, easier said than done, but I think we all need to be more willing to, especially at this stage of life, to invite people into our mess and chaos. It can be tempting to wait until the stars align and everything's perfect. The house is clean. We're not too stressed. We don't have too much going on. And like, I'm still waiting for that day to come. And so just being more willing to invite people into the messiness, the chaos. And I think your friendships will grow when you do that too, because they'll become more authentic rather than appearance based.
I think that's part of it. Like, there is, and I get it, like so and when people come to our house, one of the things you spend a lot of time doing is cleaning up. And then you have like the 2 or 3 dishes that you are good at cooking. And so you feel like you need to put on this like presentation.
Totally.
I am like, you come to my house, I'm going to order pizza. And I think that I just my wife doesn't always love this part about me. I'm comfortable with like, just go ahead and just making it work. But the second thing I want to say is that given how transient we are, we move from place to place, and it's hard to kind of maintain or reset friendships in each place. And one of the things that we've done, even though our kids are older, is to like, you stay busy. We have not been afraid to use the telephone. And that may seem to be funny because like we live in a context where we text people like, okay, here's this article, and maybe you text back and forth, and that's fine. But I think you'd be surprised at the benefit of a 30-minute actual conversation with a human. So even if you're in a place where you can't go and make fresh friends, it might be a time where you can say, I'm going to make it a goal to call a friend that I've known for a long period of time, maybe once a week. And so oftentimes I'll say to my wife, and my wife say to me, you should call so-and-so. Yeah. You missed that person. And what happens is in life, you feel like, okay, if there isn't a reason, there's nothing that's happened, or it's been a few months, you run out of excuses, and then the relationship kind of drifts, and you wait for a birthday, and you kind of hope that is your end. But no, just like schedule a time to like get on the phone. The second thing I would say is like, you have to be a little bit socially awkward, because it's like, it's almost like the dating. They need it. Here it goes. I'm about to make some money for Holy Post. We need like I've never been on Tinder, so maybe Tinder is sketchy, but basically a Tinder for adult friendships. Friender.
Yes.
Yeah, Friender.
No, that's a thing. Bumble friends.
Oh man, someone's
You're too late. You're too late.
Bumble friend. What is it called?
New.
What is it? It's like you can just have friends.
Bumble's a dating app, but then a lot of people have started to use it to like meet friends.
No. Mine is only for friends. It's not like just for friends.
Just
Friender is what I'm going to call it.
Okay.
And so, and you can do it by like life stage. Like I want a friend who's in the same life stage as me. I want an older friend. So you know what I mean? Like I want to cross generation. So basically, I think that. But what I'm saying is, you have to be willing to say something like, this is back in the day when I was a kid. So you remember this. You weren't even born for this, Emerson. Back in the day, when you liked a girl, I guess I'm assuming if you liked the boy, if you're on the other side, but I'm over here, right? You have to go up to the girl and ask her for her phone number like a lunatic. And she would write it on a sheet of paper, and you didn't have a cell phone. So you had to then go back to your house, call her on the phone. Her parents would answer the phone. You got to get through that gauntlet, and then you have a conversation. Wow. And so it took a lot of courage. There was no texting. And so I think you need to be willing to say, Not just, we should have dinner sometime. Can I have your number? So then I can schedule an actual meal. So I have so many people in my life who I've said, we should have dinner, we should have dinner, we should have dinner. It's what you say.
Yeah.
But I've made no effort to actually go beyond that. And I think you have to be the one to breach that like thing. And you got to have like the awkward like conversation where you get to know each other. It's like almost like a first date. And I think that sometimes there's this fear that, and maybe that is the case. You have awkward dates. You say, you know what, these aren't going to be the friends.
Yeah, you're going to have like a
ghost
low
people.
success rate at times. Like there's going to be people you just don't connect with, or people you try and it doesn't work for whatever reason. But I think you're right. You have to be intentional, proactive, be okay with a low success rate, and think outside the box. There's no silver bullet here.
Yeah. One of the things that's been tricky in my context, it was probably you shouldn't like write books. But like I wrote a memoir, and I'm assuming that like everybody who meets me knows it. But like there's only certain stories that you tell. But now all of my stories somewhere on the internet, it's like, I know Esau, this is how you met your wife. So I need to have some new life experiences, because like all of my first.
Poor Esau, I'm just so famous. I have this award-winning book that everyone's read. So now I don't have any stories to
it's
tell.
Awkward. I was actually preaching on Sunday, and I was going to go into one of my stock stories. Like, it's in chapter 2. I was like, okay, the congregation's checked out. So anyway, what's our next question, Emerson? I was not trying to say I was famous. See, can I see that? People can't see it. Go ahead, Mike.
We do these Holy Post events sometimes. And recently, I was in Detroit this last weekend, and we have a box that people can write questions or comments in. And someone wrote, his name's Justin. He goes, "Let Mike co-host the show, Esau, your brother in Christ, Justin." Thanks, Justin. I met Justin. Great guy. Very smart, very wise and discerning. Trust his opinion.
Can I ask you a question? How many cards did they put into the box?
I bet there was like 20.
How many cards do you carry with you like a talisman?
Are you saying I shouldn't frame? I should cancel my.
You brought the thing onto the podcast. People can't see it. You've been holding it.
It was
and rubbing it the whole show.
Not true.
And now you're like, Esau, you think you're so famous? I'm famous too. I got Justin in my eye.
I felt like you were trying to replace me with Emerson, and I just wanted you to know
to remember.
At least one person likes me. Okay.
Somebody put in the box the next time we have an event to make Emerson the co-host to kind of balance everything out. What's our next one, Emerson?
All right, we can continue with the relationship theme, but this one's about marriage.
Ooh.
I was told when I was younger, if I was ever in a marriage where we don't fight, that's a sign that the marriage is unhealthy. My wife and I have been married for 12 years now and don't fight. We just evaluate the situation and come to a consensus. Is that truly a sign of an unhealthy marriage?
Mike?
I go for it.
No, I'm not Switzerland. I got to take. So listen, it depends on what you mean by fight, right? So me and my wife don't fight in the sense of like yelling at one another. And most of the time when we have a disagreement, we just kind of work through it. And so I would say that our marriage is not characterized by conflict. We have a pretty low conflict marriage. And I do think that there is no inherent virtue to like fighting. But I would say sometimes that for the sake of peace, you can suppress your feelings for the sake of getting along. And over time, that can breed resentment that can then kind of bubble up. And so it sounds crazy because I've been married now 20 years or 21 years. What's this? This is what year is this?
25.
Yeah, so it'll be 21 years in December, I think. And so 12 years may seem like a long time, but I want to say you haven't made it to the end, bro. So I want to say two things then. As long as each person feels free to be themselves and they're not suppressing something for the sake of peace that builds resentment, there's nothing wrong with having a relationship that is not characterized by people shouting at each other. I actually think I would probably say 12 years of shouting might be a sign of a different kind of problem.
I mean, it's so funny. Like I know couples who fight all the time, and I am like, are you sure you guys are okay? And I think that's their communication style. And I know couples that don't fight at all. And I think you nailed it, Esau. Every marriage is different. There's not one thing that fits for everyone. And so as long as both people in the relationship feel the freedom to express themselves and what they're thinking and what they're feeling, and 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 it could even be good to do like a little bit of an audit of, hey, let's just sit down and we're going to be intentional about talking about the way we handle conflict. And let's just make sure we both feel like, yeah, we've got a good handle on this.
But sometimes, and this might seem, and I'm not talking about fighting, so forgive me, I'm not talking about disrespect or anything like that. Sometimes you have to work to actually bring out the real disagreement. And I'll say to my wife, like, no. Tell me what you really think. Because she's so, like, sometimes you can be so committed to making the marriage work that you're unwilling to, like, say what you actually think. And so sometimes it could be there is peace, but one of us isn't saying what we really think.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's go to, what restaurant you want to go to? Oh, let's go wherever you want to go. It's okay, we're going to go here. And, okay, no, tell me what you actually, and so I think that getting to this place where you feel comfortable telling the truth, and a lot of times if you ask a second time or a third time, that's when you get to the truth. And maybe not just in marriages, but in relationships. I said to one of my kids the other day, it's like, listen, you say that everything is fine. My perception of things aren't fine. But I can't love you well unless you actually tell me the thing that is bothering you. Otherwise, that's a wall that I can't get around. And I'm only stuck guessing. And so I do think that sometimes it's really important to not just be satisfied with agreement, but try to find a place where everybody's mutually flourishing. And so instead of looking for ways to start an argument with your spouses, I probably would not suggest doing.
Right.
I don't actually have to do that. I feel like I'm good at knowing my wife without trying. But
I wish we could invite her on the podcast.
She's been on the podcast for like 30
Briefly,
seconds. Yes, that's the reason.
Let's just see if that's true,
And so what I'm saying is I think that saying we've been married for 12 years, are both of us flourishing as much as we can? And what kind of work do we need to do to get to mutual flourishing? I felt like that was good. I might just be the relationship guy.
What if just 2 hours is all it takes to realize that God might be calling you to something more? What if 2 hours could shift your perspective and maybe even your calling? That's exactly what's happened for hundreds of people who've attended Taste of Northern, a free live classroom experience from Northern Seminary. For over 100 years, Northern has been equipping leaders to engage the world with the gospel. And now, through Taste of Northern, you can sit in on a real seminary class via Zoom and experience the richness of theological education at no pressure with no cost. Coming up on April 28th and 29th, you can join one of 3 classes with leading New Testament scholars Dr. Nijay Gupta and Dr. Matthew Bates, or Old Testament scholar Dr. Ingrid Faro. These are real-time classes with real students and world-class professors, all from the comfort of your home. Sign up today at seminary.edu/taste. That's seminary.edu/taste. That's seminary.edu/taste. 2 hours, 3 different classes to choose from that just might change everything.
Zones field got him doing football numbers, only average grown. He was acting grown.
All right. The next one, let's go back to job and career. I feel like this is a very relatable question. Jeremy asked, I want to learn to be more grateful for my job. I have good coworkers and it pays my bills, but sometimes I feel like I'm not pursuing my dreams or God's plan. And so he's wondering about what advice do you give for those who are trying to be faithful to God with their lives and kind of be content, but still feel like they're not missing out on the big dreams that they have.
Emerson, do you think that was actually written by Mike and he wants to be the host?
Wow.
Great coworkers, that's true. No, I think that what happens is we have this idea. And maybe because we live in this world of infinite choices, and we think that now God has this perfect career path for us, and it's our job to listen very carefully to God. And if we listen carefully, we will make the right choice for major, job, and career, and then we'll maximize our happiness. Yeah. But if we don't hear from God correctly and we choose the wrong major or the wrong job, we end up at 75% happiness. Now, I just want you to imagine that for most of human history, you grew up and you Your calling was to work on the farm.
Yeah.
And I was like, there was no like, do I want to be a wandering Bedouin or not? You did it. And most of your day was living like hand to mouth. And not just like in ancient times, but in most of the world now, there's not infinite job opportunities. You have to do whatever it takes to live and survive. And the question becomes, and I think that one of the things that I said, and Emerson, I taught you once, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember, I said this in class. I say this every semester. Maybe why would you remember this? It was like 5 years ago. We often think about the kind of job we want to have instead of the kind of people we want to become.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say, rather than trying to find the perfect job, focus on becoming the kind of person who can be useful to God wherever they put you. And if you focus on being the person who's useful to God wherever they put you, then you can't fail, right? That if you can glorify God, if God is glorified in a life that reflects his character, then we can reflect character wherever we are. And God has a way of ordering our lives to put us where he wants us to be. I have this thing that I've started saying recently, everything in God's good timing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that God's going to give us everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's that everything that God has for us, that he wants us to do, he will make it possible in his timing. And a lot of times what we think that we might want, we might not be ready for.
Mm-hmm.
Or God might actually take it from us or hold it from us long enough for us to realize that we didn't actually want it.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of things that were goals of mine that I really wanted to accomplish and I really wanted to do, but it didn't happen. And now I'm recognizing with clarity with the life that I actually have that this one is better.
Yeah.
That I think that maybe I could put it this way. The life that we can construct for ourselves is not as good as the life that God can provide for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of what it means to be a Christian is to say, how can I glorify God in this context? And so I get it. We have dreams that we want to pursue and we have things we want to accomplish. But I want to say what you're doing now is not wasting time until you get to your dream. You're becoming the kind of person who can do the work that God has given you to do. And I know this is like pastor talk, but almost nobody in the Bible does the thing immediately. Every single person who does anything significant spends a significant amount of their time off stage.
Yep.
And a lot of that time off stage is character development in life that makes them useful. One of the things that I talk about as relates to my writing career that you made fun of, Mike, is one of the best parts about it is that it happened late enough in life for me not to care. That I was blessed to have whatever success I had as a writer after I realized that the most important thing was my wife and my kids. And that I really do sometimes think of some of this other stuff as interruptions. And I think that had I been like 25, 26, I might have been like, oh man, it's pretty cool to be able to write these things and do these things, but I genuinely don't care. What I really care about now is spending time with my family. And actually the thing that I get joy most from any writing or podcasting or teaching that I do is the benefit that it gives to other people's lives.
Yeah.
And so I think that maybe it could even be the case that whatever it is that you want to do, you're not ready to receive it, because a lot of the things that's actually hard to do is to maintain that thing over a long period of time. And a lot of the stuff that we see, at least in my world, clergy who struggle are people who got a lot soon and they didn't have the integrity to do it over a long period of time.
Yep.
So
I think that's right. I've got thoughts as well. I think we make a mistake when we confuse our calling with our job. There's a difference between the two. And for some people, it's the same, and that's great. And for others, they have a different calling outside of where they work. Their job is a job. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And then I also think we make a mistake that we think an ordinary life is an insignificant life.
Yeah.
By no means is that true. Ordinary does not mean insignificant. If we look at what God has called from each of us, he has called us to live a faithful life with him. And that can look in lots of different ways. But regardless of where your work is, what your career is, how you're making your money, it doesn't change the fact that God has called you to love your neighbor, to care for the least of these, to care for the brokenhearted, to make the meal for the family who's grieving in your church. You can do so many incredible, tremendous things even without ever being famous, even without writing a book that everyone knows all of your stories from. And I just I still remember, when I was at Wheaton, Lisa Beamer came, wife of Todd Beamer, who passed away who died on 9/11. And she gave one of the best commencement speeches I've ever heard, because Wheaton is, the stupid nickname is the Harvard of Christian colleges, and many students have gone on to do great things. And so many commencement speakers come in and say, you're the best of the best and go change the world for God. And she came in and basically said, I had my 15 minutes of fame and now I live a pretty mediocre, average, ordinary life. And there is goodness in that. And so you may go on and live a very average, mediocre, good life, ordinary life, but that doesn't mean you're not making an impact in your community.
One of the things that I've always found interesting about, or not interesting, compelling about Christianity is this thing that Paul says in 1 Corinthians, like that God chose the weak to shame the strong, those that are not to shame those who are, so no one can boast in anything except for the Lord. That's effectively it. And the point of all of that was, God looked upon the ordinary and not just said, it is good, but you are the object of my special affection. Yes. And so he says, not many of you are wise. He basically says, y'all were the scrubs. That was in first grade, like y'all weren't rich, you weren't smart, you had no status in society. And God looked upon you and said, this is exactly who I want. And the idea that we think of salvation by grace strictly as a theological statement about like how we're saved. And that's true, right? That we're saved by grace through faith and all that stuff. But it's also showing that God in general, not just as it relates to salvation, that God is not impressed by us. And that what matters is not God being impressed with our resumes, but that God looks at all of our lives and he sees each life worthy of dignity. And one of the things that I often talk about as it relates to Jesus's teaching, like the Sermon on the Mount was given to a crowd of just ordinary people. And he presented to those ordinary people the ethical life. And so he said that even in your poverty, even in your ordinary lives as a fisherman or as a day laborer, that you can, in that life, glorify God through who you are. That's what I was trying to get at. When we think about God as it's focused mostly on accomplishments, but God is focused on the kind of people we become. And if you're confused about the accomplishment that God has for you, focus on the kind of person that God wants you to become. So I agree. What's our next one?
Can I just add something?
Oh,
It reminds me of this moment that I think about this all the time. I was in a moment, like a crossroads with work moment, kind of an existential crisis. And I remember asking a mentor, I was getting kind of emotional. I was like, I just don't know how to maximize my potential, which is like such a like an angsty college student thing to say.
It was me. She was talking to me.
But I totally had internalized that pressure to like, it's on me to maximize my potential. And that is an insane amount of pressure, especially when you're young, but even throughout your whole life. And my mentor heard me say that and she kind of like recoiled. She was like aghast. And she's like, that is not your job to maximize your potential. That's God's job. But I love what you were saying, that we don't even necessarily know what the maximum potential for our lives even looks like. And a lot of that does have to do with like the sanctification of the type of people we're becoming. And God is like the only one wise enough to know really what it looks like to be a flourishing version of ourselves. And that goes far beyond just what our career is.
Do you feel like there's more pressure on your generation? For those of you who are listening to the podcast, Emerson is not old as I am and old as Mike. She's a little bit younger. Because of all of the access to like, you're just way more connected than I was at your age. And you see like a constant bombardment of all of the problems that are going on in the world. Do you feel like this pressure to fix something?
Oh, to fix something?
Yeah. Like, do you feel like it's my job to take on Gaza or South Sudan or like politics or like the environment? They're like these huge things that when I was a kid, I was not nearly as cognizant, or I didn't have all of this stuff at my fingertips.
I think we do. A lot of us do feel a burden we're very aware of what's going on, but I think a lot of that just makes us feel really powerless. Like when we also see a lot of adults or people older than us who we would want to look up to, maybe not handling things very well. And then we feel like, well, what hope is there for like, how much can I do as a person?
I totally get that. And I get so frustrated when I do see people who are just become despondent over the atrocities overseas, and rightfully so, and yet they ignore the hurting people in their very communities.
Yeah. I was talking to this pastor guy. I was speaking. I won't say where I was speaking. I was speaking somewhere, so I don't want this person to get hunted down. But he said that a lot of times when he's dealing with students and undergrads, they have a lot of questions about like what their ministry is doing for like the poor and these things. And it's a big issue. And then this person said, but when we actually have a sign up to come to the soup kitchen, we can't get anybody to come. And so he said, on one hand, they want us to perform this public issue of injustice, but when it comes to actually doing the concrete work, it's hard to get people. So give us a light one, since we never talked about like existential crises. Give me something easier.
All right. This one sounds like it's a pretty big deal in this family.
Okay.
Our family has an ongoing debate on what is several.
Yeah.
Is it 3 to 4 or 6? Help us end the arguments.
Oh, I got this one.
Okay, go ahead.
All right.
Okay, go ahead.
I will answer this for you.
Okay.
I've got it.
You're going to fix it.
I have. When this question came in, Emerson could tell you, I just went on a rant like, no. Like, this
I
is
have
easy.
an opinion too.
Okay.
Here
you go.
this.
A couple is 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
A few is 3.
Okay.
Several is like 4 to 6. So I am kind of like, it's definitely not, several is not 3. That person's wrong. That's, I have concerns for that person.
Okay.
Several is like 4 to 6 or so. 7 to 10 is like many.
No, that's like a lot.
No.
Okay.
A lot is anything over 10.
Okay.
Okay.
You had this set up.
That's the formula.
That is really breaking it down.
It really depends on who's speaking. This is postmodern truth.
No.
Okay.
Math is math, Esau. Math is math.
Okay, here it goes. So if there's a thing of cookies, right? And someone said,
we already know you eat all the cookies apparently, and don't let your children have any.
How many have you had? You could say a couple, and if you're defending yourself, that could be anywhere from like 2 to 4.
No,
like about a couple. Like I don't know how many have it. Especially if you know you're going to eat a lot and you intentionally don't count in your head, so it's hazy.
Esau, you are describing lying. This was an objective formula.
No. So what I'm saying is, so a couple, if it helps you, it's anywhere from 2 to 4.
Ron,
but this is why this is so needed.
A few is similar. A few is like 3 to 7.
Ron,
a few.
Ron.
And so several just depends. Like it depends on like what several could.
A couple is 2 to 4. If I say, oh, look at that cute couple over there. How many people is that? Is that
it's 2?
Okay.
But I'm just saying, like, if someone's attacking you for like eating the leftovers or something, you just had a couple.
What you're saying is like, if you want to gaslight someone.
Yeah.
I don't know. I had a few. I mean, I don't know. Like, so what I'm saying to you is, it depends on the object. So
this was just all a play. All the people in your life.
One more, Emerson. So you can choose whatever's your favorite one.
Ooh. Okay. I just always want to talk about church.
Okay.
So let's do a church question. The last time I went to church, I was overdressed as everyone else was in Seahawks jerseys and holding coffee cups during praise and worship. It felt like a rock concert. I can't really do that kind of church anymore. They basically said, and they participate in online Bible studies and tithe to various Christian organizations, but they wonder if they should belong to a church. Am I doing something wrong by not joining a traditional church?
So once again, I am not Switzerland. Mm-hmm. This is Dr. McCall. This is the Esau McCall that's giving you takes. Okay, so I'm not trying to be a law unto myself.
Okay.
I think asking the question, am I doing something wrong, is the wrong framing. Mm-hmm. I think that sometimes as Christians, and this is not just this person, in general, we ask the question, is this a sin? Mm-hmm. And if it's not a sin, then we just kind of like, we're free. And I say, well, instead of asking, like looking, like what's the bare minimum, like what would it look like for me to flourish the most as a Christian? Mm-hmm. And I think that most of us would acknowledge that we will flourish the most in a healthy Christian community. Mm-hmm. So rather than me saying, like, in other words, if you frame the question of, is it wrong? Then we get into an argument as to whether or not this is a particular sin. And we get into a fight of defining what it means to be in church. What does it mean to do those things? But I want to say something like, what does it look like to be flourishing most as a Christian? And I think that the Christian life is lived out in community with people who you can know and who can care about you and who you can serve. And so I think that for me, and I know, listen, the search for a good church is hard. It's probably one of the hardest things to do is to find a church that fits you. It seems like non-denominational mega church land might not be this person's cup of tea. But I want to say part of it is spiritual maturity, at least in our context today, is taking the time and the energy to keep visiting churches.
Yeah.
And then bearing with it. And the other thing is to say, not just what church meets my needs, where's the church where I can serve?
Yeah.
And that sometimes we find meaning through serving. I often talk about how we often have this one great experience in a church and our lives that shape us. This is the best church I went through. I grew a lot as a Christian there. And we could spend the rest of our life chasing that experience and nothing can ever meet the standard of that original church. But I like to say instead, what if we reframed it and said, that church was the kind of church that gave you the spiritual maturity to be able to survive in a complicated world where everything isn't ideal. And maybe it's part of your vocation as a Christian to go and improve and help and serve in those churches. Now, obviously, I'm not saying you should go to a place where you're being mistreated or there's spiritual abuse or there's false teaching. But I think that churches are filled with human beings. Human beings are often inadequate. And because of that, churches are rarely going to meet your needs. Totally. What a church is trying to do, and this is kind of this crazy thing that I don't think we take seriously enough. A church has the audacity to say, we want to bring you in touch with the infinite. We're going to usher you into the presence of God. Who is sufficient for such a thing? Who can actually do that? Who can communicate regularly the awe and the magnificent and the transcendence of God? I'm a pastor. I feel that failure all of the time. And so I want to say that obviously I could talk about the Bible that says do not neglect meeting together, but I want to say, let's just think about, rather than doing that kind of stuff, what might it look like to flourish as a Christian? And to me, we are flourishing most in healthy Christian communities where we can both serve and be served. And it seems to me clear from the New Testament in the wider Bible that God intended for the life with him to be lived out with community. The eschatological vision is not that we ultimately kind of go off into our own corners, that one day God and man comes together and we worship in community. So I'm going to say I'm always going to be pro-church as a conviction. And I want to encourage people not to give up on churches. I have invested a significant portion of my life in the local church. And one of the things that I really decided was, even if it meant that I was traveling around less, I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but it was people like this. And not that our church is perfect. Please don't hear me say that. You probably won't like it if you come. But I'm not saying we're better, but I'm saying I heard enough people say that I felt it was worth my time to invest in helping create healthy communities. And I want to encourage anybody I'm going to ramble about this. We are the most educated, people consume all of this Christian content. Even now, they're consuming this, they're consuming the Holy Post, they're reading the Bible, they're buying all of these books, they do all of this stuff, which you should continue to do. Subscribe to Holy Post Plus. But I also want to say, and then we take that heightened knowledge and that heightened awareness and we bring it to the church. And we say we want the church to meet this standard. But we think of the pastoral ministry as a job that nobody wants, and that it's almost a job only for the people who are passionate about stuff. But maybe all of these people who are super passionate about the church, who really care, who are really invested, who are theologically sophisticated, there actually be more people who are called to the pastoral ministry. We might actually need more people who are willing to sacrifice and give up different types of jobs to create the kinds of communities that people need to flourish. So some of y'all should be pastors.
Yes, we need new pastors.
I'm pro-church too. There's a lot of bad churches out there. Absolutely. And you should leave churches that are harmful, of course. But, my wife and I bought a Toyota RAV4. They're not a sponsor, right? So I can tell the story. We bought a Toyota RAV4 a few years ago. Had a terrible experience with it. It had problems from basically week one. And then for years, it just plagued us with issues. Now, my solution was not to say, I'm never driving a car again. I'm just going to walk everywhere I go because I had a bad experience with this Toyota. Now, it was my conclusion to say, I'm not buying a Toyota again. It was my experience to say I'm not buying a mini SUV. We need something bigger. I explored different modes of transportation. But it wouldn't have made any sense for me to say, like, I'm just never traveling again because I had one bad experience with one type of car. I think when it comes to churches, many of us approach church with a consumeristic mind. It is, what can I get out of this? How can it fulfill me? How can it help me feel closer to God? And on the one hand, yes, a church should do some of those things. And a church is described as the family of God. And in a family, there is compromise, there is conflict that you contribute and you receive. And I think when you're in Christian community, it is so hard, but it does teach you patience and humility. And it gives you that community that is so desperately needed and is the vision for the new heaven and the new earth one day. Yeah. And so I would say, like, you can't give up on Christian community. It may not, the traditional church route may not be the path to go, but you can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater either.
You want the last word, Emerson?
Sure. Well, yeah, I just think I've discovered there's so many different types of churches out there than I even ever imagined. Like in college, I started going to an Anglican church, and not it completely, and I would love to go to yours.
It didn't even exist. I'm messing with you.
But it just like completely revitalized my experience of going to church. It was like liturgical and sacramental, and I found it so invigorating. And so, and I know people who go to like house churches, and a lot of their services, like they just like go on walks around their neighborhood, or they participate in their community. And so, yeah, I think having a curious and explorational approach and being like, I wonder what's out there. And there's always just like more than we can imagine at any given time.
Well, this has been Help Us Help You. Hopefully you've learned something. And if you haven't, it's too bad, because I had a great time answering these questions. Please send some more, and we get enough good ones. We might do this again. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Or thank you for listening to the podcast. I can say that without mumbling.
Should we just try exiting the podcast a few more times? You just want to keep
you know what?
How many times you want to say bye?
Mike, do you want to say goodbye? Because you got to say hello.
I never say goodbye.
No. Okay. Say goodbye to the people, Michael.
I will say, Justin, you're great, man. And really good discernment, a good eye for talent and wisdom. I don't think any of this is going to make it into the episode.
No, it's not. It's okay. Knock yourself out. Thank you for listening to the Esau McCauley podcast. It has been me, your host, Esau, and I've been joined by Emerson and Mike, and we had a great time. We'll talk to you soon. The Esau McCauley podcast is a production of Holy Post Media, produced by Mike Stay Low, Stray Low. If you know, now you know. Edited by Seth Gorvette, like a Corvette. Music by Rob Noor. Make sure to follow the show wherever you get your podcast and leave a review so more people can find it. See you next time. I'm out.
I'm penning these letters with prayers they can aid your endeavors. It's clever benevolence, tasted it, wrestle with, still wrestling. Touch my side and it crushed my pride and told me I'm blessed within. Receive a Christian platitude with gratitude, but in the saddest news I live in doesn't add up to the Beatitudes. Catch me in the catacombs, chiefing like they Pat Mahomes, catching bullets, tackle foes, running plays, defending zones. Field got them doing football numbers, only half is grown. He was acting grown.